Hello, everyone, and welcome to my Unlocking Your Heart Yin Yoga class. This practice is about an hour long, and as the name suggests, it focuses on yin postures that help open the connective tissue across our chest, our upper back, and our shoulders. We'll also do some hip openers as well, because I feel like you can't do a yin practice without at least one hip opener. And because of the poses that we're doing, I highly recommend having props handy, such as a block, a blanket, and a bolster. If you don't have a bolster, because not everybody does have a personal bolster, then just grab a few blankets that you can roll up into a roll, or maybe a few firm pillows, maybe both. Doesn't really matter if you have real yoga props or not, but just that you have things that you can use to support the body in a few different ways. As always, honor your body in practice most of all, and be sure to opt out of anything that's not working for you and to change anything that you need to change or modify. We're going to get started laying down on our belly in a posture that's not technically a real yin posture, but I do find it helpful and we can hold it and come into it the same way we would a yin posture. So lie down on the belly. And here we're going to find a shoulder opener. So I like to, anytime I'm laying on the belly, put a support for underneath of the tops of my feet. You can also do the same thing with the knees. We'll start with our left side by extending our left arm out to the left, flipping the palm so that it's up towards the ceiling and the thumb is pointing back behind you. You can put a block or a blanket underneath the side of the face, and you'll start to roll only as much as feels okay and comfortable to you to the left. And you might drop the right foot back behind you for a little extra support. But because we're holding this shape the same way we would any yin posture, we want the muscles to be soft. So support yourself enough so that you can fully let go into this pose, allowing gravity and your body weight and time to open the shoulder. Without forcing, without effort, without engagement. But surrendering in time. And as with any yin class and any yin posture, we aim in all poses to find our principles of yin. So find your edge. Support yourself enough so that you can be in an appropriate edge and range for you. Find stillness, find softness. Find your breath. And stay. Close the eyes so that even the eyelids themselves can come to stillness and softness. Relax the teeth and the tongue inside of the mouth even, allowing the jaw to come into a place of softening. And oftentimes the mental challenge of our yin practice is the challenge of being still and present. It's much easier to be present in movement when we only have to focus on a pose for a short amount of time. But when we stay in a yin posture for longer amounts of time, the mind can wander so much more easily. And so find what anchors you into the present. Maybe it's visualizing the breath going in and out of wherever you feel sensation, focusing directly on the sensation itself, where you feel it, you feel it, how it changes over time. Maybe it's focusing on the breath and the movement of breath. Perhaps you're playing music now and you're focusing on the music as it changes. Or maybe you set an intention for yourself. And so here, bring into the forefront of your mind whatever it is that brought you to practice right now. Whatever brings you to your mat today. ask yourself, why do I practice yoga? And why now? And use that, whatever it may be for you, to guide your intention, your affirmation, your mantra, perhaps a dedication. And together we seal those intentions in, whatever they may be, by taking a deep breath in through the nose and a long breath through the mouth. Deep inhale. Exhale. Here, very gently and slowly start to roll back to center. Always taking time and care to come out of our yin postures just as much as when we come into them. Come back to the center and just let your arms come into cactus or goalpost arms, or out into a T for a moment. Let the shoulders settle and maybe shimmy the hips and low back side to side. Good. And as you're ready, just come into stillness for a moment. And then as you're ready, we begin to switch sides. So you'll extend the right arm out to the right, flipping the palm so that it's pointing up towards the ceiling. And maybe you support underneath of the head and neck as you start to roll to the right. Maybe your left foot drops back behind you. Maybe you have something under the head and neck, or something supporting the low back or spine from going too far. Find your edge, that appropriate place for you, as supported as you need to be to stay there. Find stillness there. Find softness there. And stay there. Notice how this side, this shoulder, this side of the chest and upper back, how it feels compared to the right side. How it feels compared to the left. And it's not to notice or label one side as being better or worse than the other, but just to become curious and notice the differences in our body. We tend to think of ourselves as being symmetrical, when really each shoulder, each hip, each arm, and each leg can be very different from each other. So just take the time to get curious about your own body, about those subtleties and those differences. Maybe on the other side you felt this posture more in your chest. Maybe on this side it's more in the shoulder. Maybe it's higher or lower. Maybe the sensation itself feels different. Just always ensuring that we're never allowing ourselves to feel sensations of pain. We allow opening, maybe even discomfort, but not pain. Nothing sharp, shooting, burning. I often share the words of my yin teacher, who always reminds us that it's not no pain, no gain. It's no pain, no pain. There's nothing to gain from intentionally putting ourselves in suffering or pain when it can be alleviated. Stay with the breath. Take 15 more. Notice how the sensation of this pose may have changed from when you first came into it. How it's grown or transformed into something else. Take a couple more breaths here. Long, slow, full breaths. Take a deep breath in. Sigh it out. Very gently, very slowly, mindfully start to come back to the center. Again, finding cactus or goalpost arms, resting the forehead down, and just shimmying the low back and hips side to side. And then maybe stacking the hands, resting the forehead down, and just holding here in stillness for a few breaths, letting that pose and the effects of the pose settle into the body. Deep breath in. Full breath out. Here, we begin to move into seal pose. And so for seal, there's a few different variations. You can either come up onto the forearms, you could place a bolster or a blanket underneath of the forearms, or you could take the hands out to the corners of the mat and straighten the arms here as well. And you can again put something underneath of the tops of the feet or ankles or underneath of the hips. And you can, even as you're up on the forearms or hands, you can let go of the head and the neck. And when we practice poses like this in our more active styles of yoga, we really stress about having the arms, shoulders width distance apart, the legs, hips width distance apart or together. And here in our seal pose, let go of that. The legs come a little wider apart or the arms do. Allow that to happen as we allow the body to settle into its natural skeletal alignment in this shape. Find your edge. Find stillness. Close the eyes, allow them to be still. And stay. I always like to remind my students that although we aim to be still in our yin practice, that we always give ourselves the grace to allow ourselves to move and adjust if we go past our edge and we're in pain or on the verge of pain and we need to back off. We always give ourselves the grace and the opportunity to consciously move deeper if our edge melts away and we're able to do so and we wish to do so. And especially if you have an open back or shoulders, it can be very easy to underestimate this pose and to go past your edge. And so if you do, just allow yourself to back off, to resettle, to re-still yourself, and to stay. Feel the breath as it moves through the body. Notice what you notice within the body. And allow the awareness of those things to keep you present. In this moment and the next. Take 20 more breaths here. And if your edge is melted away and you've been given the opportunity to deepen and you wish to do so, perhaps you do for those next 20 breaths. Take 5 more. Deep breath in. Sigh it out. Here, gently lower the chest down. Take the hands to the mat, bending the elbows by the sides to press up gently, slowly to tabletop. And here, just press back and shift forward a few times. Maybe you even circle the hips around and around, moving very slowly and intentionally. Especially when we hold a yin posture and the connective tissue and fascia begins to open and the muscles are soft. As the muscles turn on again, when we start to move, there can be a certain degree of discomfort. But just know that more often than not, that discomfort's only temporary. It only lasts less than a minute or so, sometimes a little bit longer. That when we very consciously and gently move and slowly reintegrate the muscles, that can help ease that discomfort a little bit sooner. Good. Find a few more movements in whatever ways feel best for you here. And then as you're ready, pressing back to a child's pose. The knees can be as wide apart as you would like them to be. Allowing the arms to rest wherever is best for you, whether that's out in front of you, back by the feet. Maybe you even stack the hands and rest the forehead on the hands. Our child's pose is a yin posture in itself. So just like with any yin posture, as we settle in here, support yourself as you need to be here. Not supporting yourself so much that it becomes a restorative posture where we don't feel the pose at all. Unless, of course, that's what you're really needing today. You can always make your yin practice more restorative if you need to. But we aim to find an edge where we do feel the pose, at least somewhat. Not too much, not too little, but just right for you. And just take 20 more breaths here. Not holding this one as long, but just using it to allow our spine and back body to settle. One of my favorite things about practicing child's pose, regardless of what style of yoga it's practiced in, is the way that we can feel the breath move in both the front and back body at the same time. With each inhale, feeling the belly expand towards or in between the thighs. With each exhale, feeling the belly draw in away from the thighs. With each inhale, feeling the back body lift and rise towards the ceiling. With each exhale, feeling the back body fall. Feeling that equal expansion away from the center as you inhale. And that equal contraction back in towards the center of the body with each exhale. Take a few more breaths. Deep breath in. Sigh it out. Very slowly start to rise up. And in here we're going to transition into saddle pose. So for saddle, the feet come together and the knees come wide apart. And I definitely recommend using a blanket, a bolster, a pillow here. Putting it back behind you. And what I like to do personally is have a bolster and then put a block, which you could also use a rolled up blanket and put a pillow underneath of it. But I have a block underneath of the far edge of it so that it's on an incline. And then I like to take a blanket on the end of that to give myself a little pillow. Now you also might want a blanket for underneath of the feet or ankles if they're a little sensitive, or underneath of the creases of the knees if bending them this deeply is uncomfortable for them. You can always stay seated upright the whole time, or you'll start to walk the hands back behind you to lie down. And the arms can be wherever they're most comfortable. Knees can be however wide apart you would like them to be. And if you're used to practicing hero's pose and more active styles of practice where the knees are together and we work on keeping them together as you come back, again, try to let go of that and think of this as a completely separate pose, because it is, and allow the knees to separate rather than using your muscles to keep them drawing in together. Allow the body to soften. Allow the body to become still. And stay. And when we can soften and still the body and soften and still the breath, and the mind too can become a little softer and more still. Breathe where you are. Bring your intention back into the forefront of your mind if you've lost track of it. Or if the mind is wandering and you need something to focus on, perhaps you repeat it to yourself. And although we call it an intention, in Sanskrit the word is sankalpa, and its literal translation is often referred to as a vow set by the heart. And so in this practice, when we're physically working to open and release around our heart space, perhaps you allow your intention to reflect that as well. A vow set by your heart. What is it that your heart wants or vows to do or accomplish? Perhaps it's to be more kind, more loving toward yourself or to others. Perhaps it's something physical or spiritual for you that your heart's craving. Bring it into your mind and into your heart. That sankalpa, that vow, that intention. Take 20 more breaths here. Feeling the rise and fall of the belly, ribs, and chest with every inhale and exhale. allowing every exhale to grant you another opportunity to soften even further into this shape, to surrender and allow your body to be in the shape even deeper. Nowhere to go, nothing to do, except to just be here in this shape, fully and completely. Take a couple more breaths. Deep inhale through the nose. Sigh through the mouth. Very gently, very slowly, begin to rise up if you went down. Coming forward into tabletop. And once again, just finding whatever movements you need to counter that pose, maybe circling the hips, maybe some rounds of cat and cow. Good. Then coming to stillness and working to come into our heart opening posture, or melting heart, as it's sometimes called. A blanket underneath of the knees or shins can be a good adjustment here. I often like to use a block for my forehead. You can even cover a block with a blanket, especially if you have a cork block like mine that's not as soft as a foam block would be. But in our melting heart posture, we allow the hips to stay lifted, the arms come forward, the head comes down, and we allow the heart to melt. And if you're used to practicing a posture like this in a more active style of practice, where we focus on the belly and ribs drawing in, the core being engaged, the hips staying directly stacked over top of the knees, the hands pressing. Allow yourself to let go of those things. And take your time to find your edge. Finding stillness and softness there. Allowing the heart to melt. The breath to deepen. Body to soften. We won't hold this posture for
as long as some of our others, because it can be more intense for many. So take 20 more breaths here. And your melting heart. It can be even more difficult to resist the urge to engage muscles when our hands are down in this way. So really try to resist the urge to press into the hands or feet, to hold yourself up. Allow yourself to soften as best as you can. Take 10 more breaths. Breathe into where you feel sensation here. And if there's discomfort, rather than trying to escape it and focus on anything else, can you allow yourself to focus directly on it, to breathe into it? And perhaps that focusing directly on it will allow it to dissipate more quickly than avoiding it. Take a couple more breaths. And take a deep breath in. A full breath out. Very slowly start to walk the hands in. And coming back to tabletop. And very mindfully, very gently find those movements that you might need to counter that pose, and that in the body, in the shoulders, in the mid-back. I like to round my back and shift side to side. I might feel better to shift forwards and backwards, or to find cat and cow. Or maybe for you it feels best just to hold neutral and still, drawing in and up through the belly and engaging the core of the body to support the back of the body. One of my favorite things about yin, and I often say this a lot, is how individual of a practice it is. So the ways that we hold a posture and support a posture are very different from one person to another, and the ways that we release a posture are very different and individual to each person as well. Good. And as you're ready here, come to seated. And we'll come into our dragonfly pose, our hip opener pose of the practice. So we'll sit with the legs wide. You might sit on the edge of a blanket. You can also put a rolled up blanket underneath of the knees if it's uncomfortable to have the legs extended in this way. And then as you're ready, you'll start to round forward to fold. So not only is this a hip opener, but it also helps counter the spine from our heart melting posture we were just in by rounding forward rather than extending and arcing through the spine. I like to support under my forearms or forehead with a bolster or block, so you could support yourself and stack as many things as you need to find support here. Or maybe for you, you prefer just to have your forearms on the mat and a block under the forehead or a lighter amount of support. Find your edge here. And stillness and softness in your dragonfly pose. Find your breath. Bring that sankalpa, that intention, into your heart and your mind. becoming just as present for yourself in this pose as the others. Nowhere to go and nothing to do except to just be here in this shape. Notice what you notice. What do you feel? Where do you feel it? What exactly does it feel like? Because more than anything else, our yin practice is a practice of being present for ourselves, of allowing, of surrendering, and of becoming curious and noticing the different things we feel in the body, the way we feel the breath. The way we notice the movement and changing patterns of the thoughts. Take 20 more breaths here. Take a few more breaths, noticing if there's anywhere else you can soften. If there's any holding you can release. Take a deep breath in through the nose. Sigh it out.
Slowly, mindfully start to rise up. And at the top, engage the legs, engage the thighs, reach the arms overhead. Press down into the sits bones to reach up through the fingers. Breath in, breath out. Inhale, exhale. And here I'd like to use my hands to help assist the knees in bending again, because they can be sensitive as the muscles start to take over again. And then as you're ready, you'll come down onto the back here. You might want to put a blanket for behind the head, perhaps, as you lie down. Good. And here, as you lay down on the mat, you'll extend the arms overhead and the legs out in front of you, finding a full body stretch for a moment. And here we'll move into our banana pose. So you'll walk both of your feet over to the bottom right corner of the mat. You can either keep the feet next to one another, or you might cross the left ankle over top of the right when you find your edge, and then you'll soften. And then similarly, we'll walk the arms over to the top right corner of the mat, either keeping the arms extended or grabbing a hold of opposite elbows when you reach your edge. And then soften. Close the eyes. Just finding this passive release of the left side of the body, of the fascia, the connective tissue in the waist and in between the ribs. Breathing slowly, deeply, fully. Letting go of any pulling, forcing, doing. Instead, finding undoing, allowing, easing, softening. Take 20 breaths here. Take 8 more.
Take a deep breath in. Sigh it out. Slowly unwind, coming back to center. And as you do for a moment, just hug the knees into the chest, maybe in stillness, or maybe you rock side to side or circle the knees clockwise and counterclockwise. And as you're ready, extend the legs out in front of you, reach the arms overhead, full body stretch. And then start to walk the feet to the bottom right corner of the mat. Again, once you find your edge, maybe you cross the right ankle over. And then begin to do the same with the arms, perhaps grabbing a hold of opposite elbows as you reach your edge. And close the eyes. Soften and settle in. Breathe where you are. Bring that sankalpa back to your mind and heart. Continue to breathe into it. Take 20 more breaths. Notice if there's anywhere you can soften a little further, where you can let go and surrender a little deeper. Breathe into the right side of the body. Notice the sensations you feel there, where you feel them, how you feel them, and how that might differ from the other side. Take a few more breaths here. Take a deep breath in. Let it go. Slowly start to come back to center, perhaps hugging the knees into the chest, rocking side to side, or just staying still. Take another deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And then here we begin to find wherever it is that you wish to take rest today. And so what I suggest is finding a supported fish pose by taking your bolster or your rolled up blanket or pillow back behind you to support the length of the spine. Again, you might have a blanket on the edge of the bolster to act as a little pillow. Of course, you can choose to disregard this and just lay flat on the back as well. And then you can either, if the low back is feeling sensitive, perhaps bring the feet out to the edges of the mat and bend the knees, knocking them together to touch. If you'd like to release through the hips a little deeper, you might bring the soles of the feet together and let the knees open into a butterfly position in the legs. Or you can just extend the legs long as well. You can also take a traditional corpse pose with the arms and legs long and wide. Put your legs up the wall if you're near one. Stay seated in a meditation of sorts, whatever feels most inviting and comfortable and comforting for you right now. Take that. Find your place. Support yourself enough to let go and soften. Find stillness, find softness. Find your breath and then let it go. And stay. Nowhere to go, nothing to do, nothing to be, except here and now. Gently begin to take your deepest breath in so far. And your longest, slowest breath out. And as you're ready, slowly begin to gently and mindfully roll off to one side. And as you arrive there, allow your top hand to rest at your heart. And just take a moment to take a moment here. And to thank yourself for setting aside the time and space to practice, to open, to release, to connect to your heart. And know that that alone, making the time and the commitment, is always enough. With that same hand, gently
pressing yourself up to seated, bringing the hands together in front of the heart as you do. And I just wanted to end this practice by extending my own gratitude and thankfulness to you, whoever you are, wherever you are, for sharing this time, space, and practice with me. And I hope that you can carry any benefits you may have with you now for however long you may need them. And until we see each other again, Namaste.